You're watching News at Prime. Let's get into another conversation. Now, the ANC has cautioned its partner, the Democratic Alliance, not to use the budget discussions to try and renegotiate its position within the Government of National Unity. The Secretary-General, Mbalula, claims that the party tried to strong-arm the ANC into reversing laws such as the Land Expropriation Act and the National Health Insurance Act. Let's speak now to Democratic Alliance Finance spokesperson Mark Burke, who talks to us from Hermanus this evening. Mark, good evening to you, and thank you very much for your time. Can I start by getting your standpoint, or should we say your reaction to the ANC saying that you are trying to use the budget in trying to get or renegotiate positions in these transformation laws that I've just mentioned above? Is that indeed your position?
It's a couple of things to unpack there, Collie. First is what exactly we mean with transformation. The ANC has imposed its failed ideology and policies in South Africa, at least for the last 15 years. It's led to unemployment that's now above 30%, and young people not being able to find work, and in some cases, children starving to death. So I'm not exactly sure what they mean by transformation. But if the question is whether the DA insisted in policies that relate to the economy featuring in the budget, then that's absolutely correct. One example is that we insisted that the Cape Town and Richards Bay ports should be devolved and potentially privatized as a matter of urgency because of the chokehold on our economy. Likewise, expropriation without compensation is a deterrent for investors, both foreign and domestic. You cannot viably build a business and environment where one of the core tenets, perhaps the most important tenet of the economy, private property rights, are not respected.
The ANC says your approach to this is tantamount to blackmail because all of these other positions you are trying to renegotiate have nothing to do with the budget. How do you respond to that?
The ANC clearly doesn't understand how economics 101 work. We are in South Africa at a point where our corporate tax rates have become uncompetitive. In OECD countries, the average is 21%. South Africa is at 27%. We have Scandinavian level income taxes, and in this budget, the pseudo budget that was proposed, we have fiscal creep in that the brackets haven't moved up. And then, of course, the VAT, it'll be 1% over 2 years. The ANC is trying to somehow tax South Africa into prosperity, and South Africans are saying they can't afford anymore. Now, to the point that some of the economic principles we've tied to our budget conversations, again, that is absolutely right. That is as it should be. If we can't get these ports to be some of the better run ports in the country and in the world, where Cape Town is now amongst the worst in the world, and if we can't get private property rights secured, then we will continue to be, along with our corporate tax rates, a very unattractive environment for business, which means we won't be able to create jobs and we won't be able to grow the economy, which is priorities that we've all agreed on.
In the past, in the recent past, I won't say the past, in the recent past, at the time of the initial postponement of the budget, the DA was clear that if there is an increase in VAT, it's going to affect the poor. The criticism now could come back and say, you were unprincipled in your position because you pretended that this VAT increase was intended to cushion the poor, when in actual fact, as you reveal now, this is about ancillary issues, issues not related to the budget, as the ANC puts it. How do you respond to people who are saying your negotiating tactic is purely unprincipled?
Look, the ANC keep trying to dominate the conversation. We've been saying from the start that South Africa does not have a revenue problem. It has an expenditure problem. The proposed budget, if you take the 2025 numbers and you compare those to the 1995 Nelson Mandela government budget, and you inflation adjust that 95 budget to 2025 money, This budget is 3 times bigger, and it's 2 times bigger than the Mbeki budget was. And the Mbeki budget already had social grants baked into that budget. And the economy then grew by 5 to 6% a year. The ANC their policies have resulted in a 0.8% economic growth, the latest numbers that we've got. What we are quite simply saying here is that that is a measure of the failure of ANC policy. If you have to increase that to keep the system running, then you've completely missed the mark. And we can't keep dancing around the edges of the actual issues that's bottlenecking our economy. The DA has suggested a politically neutral 6-point plan to turn the economy around and get it going. And that includes not having tax increases in there. But it also includes many other things, including some of the things I've now mentioned, such as the devolution of rail and ports. So the ANC must catch up to 2025 global economics and start focusing on the things that will make the rocket ship take off instead of bottlenecking it. And we have to ask, whose interests are they protecting so vehemently? Why are they so opposed to finding inefficiency in our spending? Because it can't be the people who they're now trying to tax more. It can't be poor South Africans' interest. Whose interest is it?
I'd like for us to listen to Fikile Mbalula, the Secretary General of the ANC, responding to the actions of your party. Let's take a listen.
As expected, the DA has once again revealed its anti-transformation agenda by opposing the progressive budget proposal. Their opposition is not based on concerns for fiscal responsibility, but is instead a desperate attempt to undermine transformation, protect white monopoly capital, and roll back the democratic gains made over the past 3 decades. The DA seeks to use the budget process as leverage to renegotiate its role within the GNU, not because it has interests of the people at heart.
Dr. Mark Burke, is there a middle ground here that can be reached, or are you so vehemently opposed that even at the parliamentary process, you are going to block this budget from going through?
Just quickly touch on what Fikile Mbalula had to say there. He keeps using the word transformation, and I'm just not sure what he means by that. Does he mean economic growth that has effectively stagnated for the last decade? Does he mean the masses of people that are unemployed? Does he mean the vast majority of South Africans whose house values deteriorate year on year? And does he mean social grants that haven't kept up with inflation? Is that what he means with transformation? Because those are the policies that they've espoused and implemented when they had unfiltered access to state power. So I'm just not sure, again, what he means with transformation. But what I can tell you is the DA is suggesting politically neutral alternatives to get this budget to take off. There were signs of hope in the budget that's now been proposed, including that we're doing infrastructure investment, which creates jobs in the short term and creates an environment for the economy to grow in the long term. There are things that we can work together on. The DA remains committed to the GNU. As we've said from the start, we don't want to embarrass the ANC. We don't want to have a public spat with them. But they cannot keep behaving like they're a majority party when in fact they control 39% of the votes in parliament. They will need to consult with their partners. They will need to take on board suggestions, and suggestions made in good faith to try and get South Africans employed, to make government spending efficient, and to grow the economy to a place where it was growing 5 to 6% a year under sensible policies and leaders that cared for the people.
Dr. Mark Burke, let me thank you very much for your time.